This episode is sponsored by Empire's Comics Vault.
My name is Heather Jager, and I'm the creator, writer, and general all-purpose artist of a comic book called Legends of Catania.
And kind of give us some background on your story, maybe what it's about.
It's actually about a war between an alien race and the devil. So the alien race's origins start with the origins of the universe, and they have basically the same powers as the Big Bang. And so there's a lot of like quantum mechanics and things like that in the comic book. The race is actually kind of derived from a fallen angel. Her name is Lucilia, and she's actually on the cover here and also in the print. And her son is kind of the savior of the planet, and he has to fight against Lucilia's twin brother Lucifer to save the race. And so there's a lot of biblical lore and a lot of kind of sci-fi and fantasy elements. And it kind of just takes, it's not a Christian comic, but it takes Christian lore and it takes it to a completely another planet, basically.
You said quantum mechanics. I think you just took over the interview. That's where you like to sit and talk for hours about theories.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll begin. Where was your inspiration for the idea? Where did all of this come from?
Oh my gosh. It's so immense, it's hard to really pinpoint a precise origin of inspiration. But it kind of started with a conversation I had with a family member, and when I was a little kid, I was like, asking, do vampires exist? And my family's like, no, because as long as God's in heaven, God wouldn't allow, vampires and creatures to, supernatural creatures to exist on this planet. And I was, a little kid with inspiration, and I was like, that doesn't mean they can't be on other planets. And that's kind of what started the whole thing.
That's awesome.
And so, under the pretense that vampires could exist, or, unicorns or ghosts or whatever. And so, the characters are kind of like space alien vampires, is a good way to put it. They have fangs and claws and pale skin and stuff like that, but their origins are kind of in heaven, which is cool. So they're kind of like fallen angels in a way.
So it's like you're saying biblical lore, like biblical storytelling meets science, and those are two things that typically don't blend. So how do you make that work?
I wing it.
You make stuff up?
I kind of went with the whole, I really am into the Big Bang. I'm really into I'm not an expert, but I'm very fascinated with quantum mechanics and string theory and black holes and wormholes. And so, things like event horizons and when they talk about, the God particle. And the God particle actually has a huge part to do with the comic book. Has always fascinated me. And, we always hear about Christianity's belief in, the world's created in 7 days, and there's angels in heaven and things like that. And I almost kind of wanted the two universes to sit happy with each other. And so I kind of made it in a way where, quantum mechanics exists, but angels exist too. In this world, and so these heroes have the powers of, basically black holes, which is really neat.
Okay. So does that mean you're going to have like universe splits or parallel dimensions, anything like that, or you're sticking just with your current idea? Yeah.
I think that would make things really kind of complicated at this point, because I am. As, a kid with this huge imagination, I just kept making the story universe bigger and bigger and bigger, and then if I started doing parallel universes, oh my gosh, things would be super dense. I actually tell the story in a non-linear way, so if I added time anomalies and things like that, it would make it even more confusing. So I try to keep things simple. But yeah, the story does kind of go back and forth in the timeline, and sometimes there's flashbacks and stuff like that too. So it's up to the audience to try and kind of piece everything together and figure it out.
You don't go and explain everything out. You leave enough of it to where you can make it sense of it on your own, kind of thing.
Right, right. The first issue that's published is issue 0 to further confuse people, and issue 1 is almost finished right now. I'm penciling the last 2 pages. But issue 0 kind of stands on its own as its own prologue, but people can start with issue 1 and not be too terribly confused. So issue 1 kind of takes a completely different turn in the story, but it's nice to have issue 0 to go, oh, okay, so that's what that guy's problem is, or whatever, you know, that kind of thing.
All right, and inspiration, you say, is very American, but also very like Japanese or very anime. How do you blend them, and what do you leave out to kind of make it work, and that kind of...
So, you know, I'm kind of an old school artist. I've actually been illustrating for a very long time, and, you know, a lot of my inspiration came from 1980s, 1990s manga, and we're just now starting to see a surgence of American artists that are drawing in this style, and a lot of American artists are going to be inspired by Marvel, DC, Image, Disney, you know, and so these big contenders in the Western world. And so when you're an American artist, it's kind of hard to be sterile and just draw in the Eastern style. And so, you know, I start to incorporate things that come from Western style, like anatomy, like I draw nostrils in my characters, eyelashes, belly buttons, you know, and these are things like you wouldn't normally, not always, but you wouldn't normally see in manga. So that's where I kind of start to fuse things. I can't be completely one or the other. And I'm too strongly influenced by manga to just be in an American style. Even though I highly admire it, like I wish I could do superheroes, but I'm not that good.
All right, and where do you see it going? You're talking about where it's Bible lore, science, a lot, like right now you're working on one. How far is it going to go? Or are you going to release another book that's separate out? Where do you think things are going from here?
The original intention was that the actual story is broken into chapters, and each issue is a chapter of the comic, and this is volume 1, and there's supposed to be, the intention is to do 3 volumes. So the story is actually very massive, and I'm trying very hard to like simplify it as much as possible, but you know, I'll be happy if I get through the first volume. So, but I'd like to eventually make a graphic novel where it has like a compendium of issues, like issues 1 through 5 or 1 through 10. That would be really neat.
Okay, that's cool. So, what about extra work? Are you gonna like eventually, when this ends, are you gonna start something fresh that's new, or are you gonna continue with it?
If I am blessed and fortunate enough to get to the point where I finish all 3 volumes, I would probably start a new series, but because I've been doing this series for so long, I almost think that that's all I can do, like a one-hit wonder. But I also do prints. I do original art on the side, and I also teach classes and things like that. So I do other artwork, but my home is in this kind of story universe. And I do have a short comic called Red Lullaby that actually is a supplementary story. It's going to be a one-shot comic, and it's kind of been bonus pages in the back of each issue. So when you read issue 0, there's like 3 pages of Red Lullaby in there, and then when you read issue 1, there'll be 3 more pages, and so forth and so on. So eventually it'll be its own one-shot comic, but it takes place in the same story universe, but it's with a different plot. And I always love that when artists do that, where they sneak in a character from a different series, and you're like, ooh, I know who that character is, you know? So that's what I'm hoping.
Excellent. So you just got your first published today, right?
Oh gosh, no. I published in April, April of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. How do you go from, I just came up with an idea, I want to write an issue about this. What steps do you take going from figuring out whether it's a good idea or not, and then finally developing it?
I highly recommend for anybody that if they're going to come up with an idea for a comic, either if they're a writer or if they are an artist and a writer, but you know, the person that comes up with the story definitely needs to happily live in their story universe for a while. Not literally, but just, you really need to know your characters inside and out. You know, if you don't know your characters as well as you know yourself, the characters will be really flat, they'll be very transparent. If you don't find them interesting, no one else is going to find them interesting either. And so I recommend for any artist or writer to really develop their world as much as possible, and then kind of just be happy with it themselves, or at least be developing it to the point where they can be content with it before they share it. And then you worry about the technical parts, such as, am I going to do this digital? Am I going to do this traditional? Is it going to be a web comic? Is it going to be a printed comic?
Yeah, as I say, we'll kind of go back to the beginning when you're saying like the combination biblical lore and then like the science stuff. From the biblical lore part, are you talking about specific, just kind of like the creation idea, or is there other stuff thrown in there? Or?
It's mainly the creation. I don't put anybody from like the Old Testament into my comic. It kind of happily derives from just, you know, Genesis, and, you know, the universe is created, and angels. Like, I'm just really fascinated with archangels, Michael, Gabriel, you know, so things like that. And so you will find the archangels in the comic series. Oh, spoiler, but it won't go much further than that. It really isn't designed to be a religious comic. It's more along the lines of what if, and how cool would that be, you know? And then it kind of just goes from there. And it is a very serious comic. It does take dark turns. It's not a cute manga by any stretch of the imagination. It's very adult, but it has moments of being lighthearted, and it has moments of where there's humor. But it's one of those comics that really makes you think, I think, you know, like, it's meant to be an escape. It's not a social commentary, but it should be one of those comics that go, you know, things are neither black nor white, you know, if that makes sense. I'm nervous.
Yeah. From a writing aspect, do you prefer the internal conflict where you have a person that's like battling with internal demons or trying to make a decision, or do you prefer the external conflict where it's with another person or another force?
Ooh, can I choose both?
You can.
My hero of the story, he has a major internal conflict. He's chosen by his mother, the fallen angel of heaven, to fight against his uncle and take up forces against the side of evil, and he runs away because he doesn't believe in himself. And so 2 bounty hunters are hired to go and search on this planet for him, which, you know, I'm really inspired by movies like Dune and things like that. And so, you know, Frank Herbert is awesome. And basically, so they have to go and do the whole Mad Max thing and look for this guy. But once they find him and they're able to convince him, hey, you know, you really are our only hope. Haha, Star Wars. Once they convince him and he is able to take up the mantle as being the hero, then there really is this external conflict and this huge war between good and evil.
Okay, so what inspires you to write? Where you get a lot of your inspirational material from?
Movies. I'm a huge fan of movies. I actually have an associate's degree in film and television with an emphasis in animation. And particularly traditional 2D animation, like the greats, Don Bluth and the original Walt Disney, had a huge influence on me when I was growing up. But particularly 1990s, Spielberg, Lucas, Cameron, gosh, who else? But, you know, I was really inspired by, like, the 1980s, 1990s blockbuster movies that came out. You know, movies that you would go see in the summer and the winter, and you would leave the theater going, oh my god, that was so fun. And And it's
Really
sad.
like a lot of Michael Bay movies?
Yes, awesome. Any movies that have huge explosions and special effects, and they've spent gauche amounts of money on CGI and things like that. I just adore these kind of movies because it's escapism. You're paying money to leave reality and go and live in a fictional story universe, for a while. So movies particularly are my hugest inspiration aside from manga and comics. And most of the time I actually listen to movie soundtracks when I'm working on my artwork. So I'm very much looking forward to the next Sherlock Holmes movie so I can get a new soundtrack.
Robert Downey Jr. is amazing.
Indeed.
What are you reading right now?
Oh my gosh, what am I reading? I usually read through probably about 5 manga at a time. So right now I'm reading Svetlana Kimikoski. I think I'm totally butchering her name. DramaCon, and she's a wonderful female American artist who, and I actually don't know too much about her, but she does a comic book about a comic book artist who's aspiring to be published. And so it's kind of like reading about your own dreams in a way, and that's really wonderful. And I'm also reading a lot of Michael Turner. Like, I love Soulfire and Fathom. These particularly Fathom, like, I find so much inspiration in that. It's beautiful stuff.
So you read both American and manga. So what is your favorite character?
My favorite, like, fictional character of all time?
Either way.
Oh, God. I can't choose. I'm sorry. It's just too immense. Oh, man.
All right. What's your favorite universe then?
My favorite story universe. I'd have to say right now it's Neon Genesis Evangelion. I just got introduced to Evangelion this year by a few good friends, and I just adore Gainax. Like, that whole story universe of Rei Ayanami and Asuka Langley is just like, oh my god. And the mechs, like all the designs for the mechs and things like that. And I'm a huge Kira fan too, so like any of the intricate stuff like motorcycles and helicopters and stuff like that. Nazumi and Shiro, love it.
You have anything more?
I think you guys, good questions there.
What would be your favorite either writer or artist, either way?
Favorite writer or artist?
Or both?
My favorite longtime artist is probably my dear friend Melody Pena. She was kind of known through the 1990s and 1980s for doing fantasy sculpture. She does gypsum cast stone dragons and things like that, and they used to sell them in the malls and stuff like that. And I was very fortunate that I actually got to make contact with her, and she kind of helps encourage me, keep going, don't give up on your comic, and stuff like that. And so her artwork inspires me and keeps me going, and love her prints and stuff like that. She actually has a background in biology, so like all her like griffins and dragons are all like anatomically correct from like the muscles and the scales and the teeth and stuff like that, and I find a lot of inspiration in that.
No, I appreciate it. I love your artwork.
Thank you.
Sitting here staring at it, he came up with all the really good questions, and I was just kind of like staring at your work. It's really
Yeah, it is
cool.
very good. It's a
Thank
good
you.
one because it has the strong hair elements that you see in anime, but then it's got the more like kind of
The smaller details.
fluid line,
Yeah.
fluid lines and
I
things.
love
that you
hair
see in
that
American.
defies gravity.
Yeah, I know.
It's, like,
I'm a big Dragon Ball Z fan, so I'm like, I love that this spiky hair and
Yes,
it's everywhere.
definitely. Like, how is that even physically possible?
It doesn't matter. It's cool.
Yeah.
Hairspray.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you. It was great meeting
Nice
you.
to meet you.